Alright, in this video we're going to go back to PowerPoints. Yeah, I know you love them. We're going to take a little closer depth into Sanity. If you've watched some of my other videos, you've been playing a little while. You understand the basic Sanity mechanic, but I wanted to go into a little more detail, a lot more detail. So first is the passive Sanity drain. You've got different rates for the setup period, but you only get a setup period in Amateur and Intermediate. If you're single player and Amateur, you've seen me a full 5 minutes there. You don't really lose a lot of sanity in the dark, 5% at the most. So if you've seen some of my videos where I'm just busting around on a small map, yeah, I'm really not losing all that much. Now that starts to go up though. If that's multiplayer, it's considerably more. So yeah, 13.5% for 5 minutes. Amateur single player, as you see. Not that bad, actually. You're not really into any ghost hunting ranges at that point. But if you're a multiplayer, yeah, you're definitely in some ranges. You got demon, you got a yokai, you got and whatnot. You move up to intermediate though. You only got 2.5 minutes. That's almost no time on some of the maps, like the farmhouses. And you're doing single player. That could be 10% right there. Just for 2.5 minutes, and twice that if 20% if you're doing this with multiplayer. So yeah, that definitely matters. Now, most of the time, you're going to be dealing with the usual passive sanity drain, which is even more. Remember, you don't have setup times on professional or other. So, 10 minutes of amateur single player in the dark, that's 27%. It's manageable, but it's still on up there. You got demons, yokais, whatever with you. You don't multiplayer. Your entire team decides, I'm not going to bother with turning on lights. You had 15 minutes, and that's God. You're well within hunting range at that point. Intermediate, it gets even worse, and then professional, 10 minutes in the dark because you don't have that setup period. 10 minutes in the dark, yeah, you've blown through all your sanity on multiplayer, and you've blown through. You're in hunting range, even with single player. So keep that all in mind. Now, there's a lot of other things that obviously drain sanity with the ghost. If it was just a passive sanity drain, it'd be an easy game, I guess. Ghost events, like the air attacks, the collision, fighting with the model, specifically that, takes away 10% sanity. So if you've seen like Ensum or Psycho or whatever, they're like, okay, at 10%, I'm at 70, I'm at 60, whatever. Banshee, on the other hand, same idea, 15% sanity. It's not the singing, it's the model collision. Now, Oni, with changes they made to the Oni in the last year or so, that doubles that to 20%, so you keep... And now, you might think, well, some of these ghost events, they don't collide. They're just in the corner of the room, and they start singing or whatever. I can avoid that. Well, there's plenty of them, especially the air attacks. They're coming straight for you, and where they manifest might be a meter or two in front of you, and boom, you can't avoid it. So you gotta keep doing that random tally. Okay, I've been hit by 2 air balls, that's 20. I've seen a full body manifestation. This could be an Oni, that could be 40, 60% there, so keep those in mind. Now with the Phantom, the collision stuff goes out the window, so if you're within like 10 meters of it, maybe line of sight, maybe not, there's differences of opinion. That's half a point of sanity every second, which isn't a ton, but if it keeps doing events, now if you get a ghost that just keeps doing that, singing in a corner, you're like, okay, whatever, I'm not losing sanity. Phantom, on the other hand, every time it appears, is draining sanity. So keep that in mind. Now, the Poltergeist has a throw ability. Now, this is ability. This is not just any interaction by the Poltergeist. 2% sanity per object thrown. It can whittle away on your sanity. You get a really active Poltergeist. If it does a Polter throw of 5 decks, that's 10%, so that's nothing to sneeze at. So yeah, you're in the Tanglewood kitchen or whatever, and then boom, it keeps doing that. It can whittle away, so keep that in mind. Now, the Gen has a 25% drain, which the only way you can tell is use that ability is you got an EMF reader at the breaker, and it gives off a signature there, but it hasn't turned it on or turned it off. Okay. Now we could do that right out of the gate too. You can walk in, does the ability, a minute later, does the ability again. I've had a Gen take me from 100 to 0 in like a minute or two. It's unlikely, but it's a possibility. Then you got the erase, same idea, 15% instead of 25. At least this one, if you're being careful enough, it shuts the door to the room that it's doing this in, shuts it fully. You might have a delayed sound. I don't know if they fix that. Lastly, your multiplayer, somebody is just messing around, like not paying attention, they died. That's a 15% to everybody else. So yeah, keep that in mind. There are a lot of things that people have sometimes guessed that might be draining sanity. They actually don't. Like the flickering lights don't. Ambient noises, creaking boards, whatever. Not gonna do it. Don't worry. Now the ghost events, as long as there's not a collision, it can keep appearing in that corner scene all at once, and you should be fine. Exception though is a phantom. So, just because the ghost sings, that doesn't mean there's any special sanity drain from that, even though some people reported that. Basic ghost interactions, you're not going to drain sanity. You can be opening and shutting that door and whatnot. Poltergeist throw ability, okay. The ERA fully shutting door, okay. But if you're not seeing that happen constantly, you should be fine. Player voices, people talking, commentary, don't worry about it. That's not draining sanity. The common confusion is when it steps and salts. It starts making those footsteps and those audible footstep noises. That's draining sanity. They get that confused with like the Morai, but no, don't worry about it. Even if it's a Morai and steps and salt, you're fine. You actually have to actively use something there. Playing around with the equipment, the objects in the game, for the most part, isn't going to do anything. The only exception is using the music box as a grenade and tossing it down, where it starts a cursed hunt. Player interactions, you want to flip with the door, you want to play with the light switch, you're fine. And I mentioned it earlier, the Morai has that special curse ability it does. It can curse the player, causes a double passive sanity drain when they're cursed. Depending on the map and the difficulty, that can be a lot. Morai can suck the sanity right out of you. But you have to hear a paranormal noise on the parabolic microphone or the spirit box. You're not just going to randomly get that. Even though I think there was briefly a bug when the Morai was new that might have done that, I don't know. You go outside, it pauses. You have to go back in to get that effect, but it doesn't stop it. Even though I think it might have briefly when Morai was new, doesn't. You have to take a sanity pill to cure it. 4 sanity pills you bring along, yeah, that's a precious resource. Keep in mind the hunt speed for the Morai is based on the average team sanity, and it starts going faster at about 40%, or slower above whatever. So yeah, but it can be a way to test it. So I'll get into that. Cursed possessions. Oh, they love to drain sanity. Haunted mirror, 7.5 per second, or 20%, whichever is higher. So it used to be a trick. Look at it for a second. 7.5 or some figure around there. So people really got good at trying to figure out the rooms from like a 1 second look. So mind you, that time includes the animation as well. So, but yeah, a minimum 20% drain, which it's manageable. Mind you, if you're spending a lot of time looking at it, it's going to be well over 20%. The monkey paw has the I want to be sane wish. You've got, it sets your sanity to 50, but then it puts 50% more sanity drain. And then you've got when you ask to change the weather, that's a flat 25% drain. Sometimes you might want to reduce sanity. So, music box. If you're within 2.5 meters, it will drain 2.5 per second. Over the course of the entire song, that can be a lot. That can be like 70% of your sanity, and that's not just the person playing with it either. The Ouija board. Every ballad question, keep in mind ballad, drains sanity. Could be anywhere from a smaller question, like maybe it's age, I think it's 10%, to what's your favorite room? Well, that's 50%, and I think a bone's either 40 or 50. So yeah. Summoning Circle. Every candle you're lit 60% sanity drain. If you want a certain amount of sanity drain, you might actually just light candles um, instead of flat out summoning it. But once you've done the entire Summoning Circle, you're probably in hunting range. So the tarot cards, though, Sun card 100, Moon 0. Wheel of Fortune, good or bad, that's 25% up or down. And then lastly, the Voodoo Doll, 5% per pen. Used to be, I think, 10, and then they lowered it at one point. And the Heart Pen used to be 15 or 20, now it's 10%. Mind you, that Heart Pen's also starting at Curse Ton, in addition to the Sanity. But Voodoo Doll can be nice as a very controlled way to reduce some sanity, especially if you haven't used it yet, and it's a 1 in 7 chance, or 1 in 10 for pulling the Heart Pen. Candle. Holding a lit candle is going to negate that passive sanity drain. There's also some reports if you're really close to a lit one on the ground or another player holding that might also have an effect. And this gets into the idea of the Advanced Scout or the Darkness Scout. They take a flashlight so they can actually see. They take a candle and they take a lighter, and they're always holding a lit candle. And they're actively avoiding sanity drains. They're going away from manifestations. They're not trying to hang out with the ghosts. They're literally looking around in the dark for whatever. It could be the person looking at the bone, the fuse box, etc. I'm probably going to get into that in a later video. So people go back out in the truck and like, why is my sanity at this level? Keep in mind the passive sanity isn't precise. Lighting conditions, different rooms, different maps. The devs have set this way. You, in an otherwise lit room, you stay in the corner. It's still going to have some kind of drain. And it's not an on or off. I believe it's a range or a gradient there, so keep that in mind. Some reports that if you're multiplayer and you got a flashlight in your face or over your shoulder, that might reduce the drain. Maybe even if you did a flashlight out and you got close to it. Not really sure. Those ghost attacks, as I call them there, I mean, they can, usually know when you're being hit by an airball. It's a very loud sound. But a Jinn, that silent but deadly, eerie as well, they can hit you hard. And as I said before, I've gone from 0 to 100 with a Jinn or a Yuri. It happens. A lot of the time in a multiplayer game, you don't know somebody's used a cursed possession until it's too late. Especially new players, they want to play with everything, and they don't realize, ooh, this is going to drain the sanity, which may cause a hunt. So, it's a good idea to keep track of the time if you can. It helps, even a mental note, having a general idea of the passage of time. That's not going to work for everybody. It requires a lot of practice to get used to sanity drains. Play with that custom difficulty and use it to get a feel for how the ebb and flow of sanity in the game. Sometimes the ghost, you might think it's one ghost, but it's another. That'll throw people off. So yeah, you get the mimic, and that throws everything out the window. It could be a Jinn, uses ability, Uri uses ability, Demon early hunts. Yeah, and the range with things may matter there, but you should get comfortable with being on the ballpark of that and most of your investigation. So you're like, okay, I'm probably in my 70s, I'm probably in my 80s, somewhere around there. But there's always instances where you go out, you check the sanity, and you're like, what? You're really off. But again, practice helps. There's some ways to regain sanity, but there's not a lot of them. The Wheel of Fortune card with the tarot cards that give you 25% more sanity. The Sun card just brings that to 100. Monkey Paw Wish to stay sane sets you at 50 at the price of 50% more sanity drain. Sanity pills, keep in mind what they are regenerating. Could be anywhere from 40 to a wise guy might set it to 100. So yeah. Hunts affect sanity, or sanity affects hunts, I should say. Well, a little bit of both, I suppose, but 14 of those 24 ghosts, it's 50% or below, so you're usually safe. But the demon's the big scary one. You're unprofessional, Tanglewood, you walk in the door, 20 seconds later, you're dead. Why? Probably because of a demon. I have done that. I might even have a video of where I died in 40 seconds because I wasn't ready for the demon. The yokai can also hunt really early, but that requires voice, Single player, you're probably not doing enough talking. If you want to avoid the issues with the yokai, it's called push to talk. The mimic, though, could also be a yokai or a demon or whatever, so, it's very, very possible. On the other hand, shades, they hunt really late. You've been lowering your sanity, you're not sure why, what's going on. Shade. Keep in mind, shade also can't hunt if the player's in the room with it, so. The Onryo can hunt on an extinguished open flame. Usually that's a candle, but it could be the campfire. But it has to be lit first for it to extinguish it, and none of the investigations right now start with a lit flame. And then Curse Taunts, they completely ignore hunting restrictions, so yeah, keep that in mind. Now, one common misconception is you're like, oh, I'll take sanity pills, it'll be above the threshold, we'll cancel the hunt. It doesn't work that way. But it can change the speed of the Morai. So suddenly you take the pills and the ghost is a lot slower. And you're like, wait a minute, that might be a Morai or a mimic of a Morai. So, what's really left to say is just practice, practice, practice. I mean, I know people don't like being told get good, but that's true. You watch Psycho, you watch Insome, you watch some of the others. They literally have thousands of hours of gameplay. And a lot of times, some of this is off camera. They have teams of people. They can test out things and whatnot. And that's pretty much it. Go easy on people. Mental calculations, mental timekeeping. Everybody's brain's wired differently. It varies from person to person. There's some people that can't do the most basic calculations without a calculator or at least writing it down. Mental timekeeping. I mean, so don't expect people to be at your same ability, and don't be uberly wowed at the ability for somebody to be like, it's been 4 minutes. It varies from person to person. And honestly, I don't see anything wrong with keeping time. Like, you got your watch, you got your phone, stopwatch. I don't think there's really anything wrong with that, unless you're trying to be really immersive, which I can understand that as well. But yeah, that's pretty much my deeper delve into Sanity.